All right, guys. So, right now, I want to get into this topic that I actually tried to avoid when the news broke on both of these people being indicted, which was crazy work to me. But I want to talk about 45/47 and something that he absolutely hates, and that's accountability and rejection, just to name a few. He has been trying to get revenge on everyone who held him accountable. James Comey, Letitia James, prosecutors, judges, those who used to be in his administration who've spoken out against him. But the courts have made something very clear. Retribution, it ain't justice. And these revenge lawsuits, dismissed. So let's get into it, guys. What's up? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button. And if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the politics and BS. So let's talk about it, guys. The people who listened to, who gave this clown a space to speak and heard him say out of his own mouth that he planned to go after those who came after him, even though the so-called going after him was justifiable because he actually did commit crimes, he made good on those promises. He said that he was going to punish everyone who crossed him. He talked about going after James Comey, the the swirlings of possibly going after Letitia James was definitely out there, amongst other people. Anyone involved in his criminal or civil cases who was just trying to hold him accountable. It wasn't going after him, but it doesn't matter. But the courts just threw out two of the biggest retribution fantasies that he had, and that is this judge dismissed these indictments that the Trump administration came after FBI former director James Comey, ruling that he had no evidence and was simply trying to rewrite history years later. And then his attempts to go after New York Attorney General Letitia James, the same woman who exposed his business fraud and won a massive judgment against him in New York, that was dismissed too. And I'm loving it. So I'm going to share a part of the news from Brian Tyler Cohen's YouTube channel. I'm going to have the full video link in the description, but let's go ahead and get into it.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have some breaking news here that signals a major rebuke against Donald Trump in his effort to fight against his political opponents. Can you explain what just happened in court?
Yeah, Brian, the criminal cases against both James Comey and Letitia James have been dismissed by the federal judge who had to rule on whether Lindsay Halligan's appointment as interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was lawful and unlawful. I'm going to say, not surprisingly, Judge Curry ruled it was unlawful, illegal. There was no way to save it. Now, Brian, the reason I don't think that is all that earth-shattering is because we've seen this movie before. Remember Elena Haba up in New Jersey? Donald Trump tried to appoint her as interim U.S. attorney in violation of the same federal statute, and a federal judge previously ruled that her appointment was illegal. We can move out to the West Coast, the Central District of California, where Trump tried to do the same thing with a guy named Bill Esseli, and a federal judge out there ruled that appointment as interim U.S. attorney was unlawful. And here we go again. This is the highest stakes litigation of this issue imaginable, because with the ruling that Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed as interim U.S. attorney, she had absolutely no right and no legal authority to set a single foot in that grand jury room and urge a grand jury to criminally indict James Comey, the former FBI director, or to criminally indict Letitia James, the current New York State Attorney General. This is an enormous blow to Donald Trump, to Pam Bondi and the leadership at the Department of Justice, to Lindsay Halligan. But I'll tell you, it is an enormous win for the rule of law and for the Constitution, and needless to say, for James Comey and Letitia James.
How does this impact Trump's ability to continue on with these political prosecutions?
Great question. So it may impact the different cases differently. Because this indictment of James Comey came literally days before, it would have timed out. It would have expired courtesy of what's called the statute of limitations, which says you got 5 years from the date of the alleged crime, which was lying to Congress is what Donald Trump and Pam Bondi claimed. It doesn't look like the evidence bears it out. But let's assume James Comey lied to Congress. Within just a couple of days of that 5-year deadline expiring, the now we know unlawfully appointed U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan ran into the grand jury and got an indictment. But guess what? Now that it has been ruled unlawful and the indictment has been thrown out, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to try again because the statute of limitations has long since expired. And there is a suggestion in Judge Curry's ruling that that is the case. Now, let me just add a footnote. There is what's called a saving provision. There's a federal law that says, well, if the case is dismissed for any reason beyond the statute of limitations, the prosecutors, the Department of Justice gets another 6 months to try to clean it up and bring it again. It doesn't look like that statute will apply here for reasons that I'm not going to try to, do a deep dive into. And I'm going to take Judge Curry at her word in her ruling that says, nope, looks like James Comey's may have timed out. So bye-bye permanently to a prosecution of James Comey. Little bit different circumstance with Letitia James. Her case is not bumping up against the deadline, the statute of limitations. So it looks like they will probably be able to get a, lawfully appointed prosecutor, maybe an acting U.S. attorney, which is different from an interim U.S. attorney, and go back into the grand jury and try again to indict Letitia James. But that's only the beginning of the Letitia James saga, because there are still multiple motions to dismiss in the Letitia James case: vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, abuse of the grand jury in other ways. So, it looks like this may be a permanent win for James Comey, but a temporary win ultimately for Letitia James.
And this this creep is so vindictive. I could definitely see her coming after her again. But the fact of the matter is that they are allowing, Congress is allowing him to do this type of stuff when we all know, anyone that with sense knows, that he was not just went after because people were trying to seek revenge on him for whatever reasons. He actually did commit crimes. Like, literally, he committed crimes. And so the fact that all of this is allowed, it, they've allowed him to make the United States of America into one of those authoritarian nations where they're going after people simply for the hell of it, or because someone made the leader mad. What is going on right now? But here's the thing, guys, in case anybody wasn't paying attention. He wants the legal system, he wants the country to work like his old reality show where he gets to say, "You're fired," where he just has the final say. But the courts don't operate on his ego, his emotions, or his desire for revenge. And the deeper issue is, if these retribution lawsuits had succeeded, if they were allowed to move forward and they actually were like convicted of these alleged crimes, it definitely would have set a terrifying precedent. Any future president could weaponize the government against critics. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. So even though thankfully the courts, they did not allow this to move forward with the things that you heard in this breakdown, the legal breakdown that they gave regarding the prosecutor that was appointed and how things were not right with that situation. You know, the people like him who started to take on that phrase witch hunt, thinking that anyone that's holding him accountable for the crimes that he actually did commit is, oh, it's just a witch hunt. They're just after me. It's like, no, you actually did some things that were wrong. And hopefully he keeps losing in this way, because all of this is nonsense and enough is enough. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't even talk about these stories when they broke, about him being indicted, about Letitia James being indicted, James Bolden being indicted, and then all of the freaking criminals that he's given pardons to. And some of those criminals that he's pardoned that stormed the Capitol on January 6th some of them have been arrested and charged with murking people, rapinging people, all kinds of craziness. I haven't talked about all of those things because it's just too much to keep up with. And it's exhausting. And really, I am so sick of it. And that's why I did my thumbnail the way that I did it, because it's like, leave these people alone. Leave us alone as a nation. Even the people who
are supposedly supporting him, the ones that won't admit it, I can guarantee you even they are tired of him. They're just too afraid to admit it.
Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye.